Now you'll notice here in this 9th chapter of St. John, Jesus is healing this man that is blind from birth, where you've never ever been able to see things right. You ever seen people whose thinking is so twisted, their perspective is off kilter, and they have never been able to see things right? Sometimes you'll have situations where men have never had the right attitude toward women and they've been abusive all of the days of their life. Or a woman is a misanthropist and she's never been able to have proper relationships with men because perhaps she was abused by one at an early age and she just somehow had a disdain for them, or she saw a man being abusive to her mother and now she's had a problem failing in every relationship that she's ever gotten into. And so there are certain things that build in our life, and we have to be able to see them. I love, the book of John, because we are made clean through the water of the Word. Say the water of the Word. The water of the Word. Here's what I want you to see. That Jesus here sends a blind man, a man blind from birth, to the pool of Siloam. There had been other blind people in Scripture, but this is the first mention of a person who was blind from birth. And so this lets us know that even stuff that we were born with can be changed. Stuff that we were born with can be changed. One of the greatest excuses that you'll just often hear people say, I've always been that way. And that's their way of giving up and saying that there is no hope of my ever being able to change. May I remind you of something? That God will never judge you for where you are, but God will always judge you for the man or the woman that you refuse to become. And so you can make an excuse. You can be in a certain condition, and God will not just judge you and condemn you for how you are, but God will condemn you for the man or the woman that you refuse to become. That's where our real judgment comes in, is when we refuse to change after God has come into our life and done an incredible thing. But although it's extremely difficult to change, you can still change things that you were born with. You still have the power to change those things. Now, you'll notice that God calls us, what kind of animal does God call us more than anything else? Sheep. He calls us sheep. He does not call us pigs. There's a reason. He does not call us pigs. The nature of a pig is to wallow in mess. That's the nature of a pig, just to wallow in mess. But guess what happens if you take a sheep and put them in the mess in a pig pen, and wallowing in the mud? Do you know what will happen to a sheep? A sheep will start crying. Sheep cry when they get dirty. But the pig enjoys wallowing in their mess. The sheep does not enjoy it, and the sheep is very, very quick to make things right, but the pig says, mind your own business, leave me alone. I'm in hog heaven. God created us as sheep and not pigs. And you'll notice here how they ask the question, who did sin? This man or his parents, that he was born blind? You know why they asked that question? Because in first century philosophy, they had a thought that every consequence was directly related to a person's sin, that everything happens for a reason. And that's why the disciples asked, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? They also believed that infants had the ability to actually sin in the womb. They believed that, I don't know what in the world an infant, an embryo can do in the womb that was a sin. Think about pulling too much of the mother's nutrition. I mean, I don't know what kind of sin they could be doing, but they assumed that babies had the ability to sin in the womb, and that even deformity and abnormality in a child was payback to the parents. They had that philosophy in the first century. And so, but there are some problems that exist, just as Jesus said when they asked this man, who has sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind like this? And Jesus answered and said, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. In other words, there are certain things that happen that are specifically for the glory of God. There are certain things that are specifically for the glory of God. Now, I want you to notice this. Notice that Jesus sent him to the pool of Siloam, told him to go wash, and then he would come again and see him. Now notice, you do not prosper when you go to places that you are not sent. Jesus sent him to the pool of Siloam. The word Siloam means sent. When you obey God and go to where God sends you, your eyes can open. There are certain things that you will never see until you actually obey God and go to the place. Touch your neighbor, say go. Until you go to where you are sent. So when he sent him here, the pool of Siloam, meaning sent, when he got to where he was sent, his eyes were open. Our eyes become open when we get to where God sends us and we wash. But you must be sent in order to get results. You can't just go because you know somebody else who went. You have to go because you were sent. You go to your destiny. You go to your calling. You go to your passion. You fulfill what God has called you to do. As a disciple, the disciples have been given a great commission to go into all of the world. May I give you some things that a disciple does as you are sent? You're sent. Always keep this in mind. As a disciple, put as a disciple and put colon there. As a disciple, there is always a person to please. That person is Jesus Christ. As a disciple, there is a person to please. There is a person to please. As a disciple, there is a price to pay. There is a person to please and there is a price to pay. There is a person to please and there is a price to pay. There is a price to pay. There's a cost of discipleship. It'll cost you your own feelings. It'll cost you doing things your own way. It will cost you. It will cost you. There's always a person to please. There's always a price to pay. There is always a purpose to pursue. There's always a purpose to pursue. With every disciple, he has a purpose that he is called to pursue. There's a person that he has to please. He has to please his commander who has enlisted him into the army of the Lord. And he has to pay the price. And he has to pursue the purpose. And then there is a prize to possess. There is a prize to possess. When you obey God, there will be laid up for you a crown of glory. There is always a prize to possess. There's a person to please. That's why we worship him, because we want to please him. That's why we have faith, because without faith it is impossible to please him. And here's the deal. I want you to notice this about this blind man, blind from birth. God called him to go to a place that he couldn't see, because we walk by faith and not by sight. So God called him to go to a place where he couldn't see himself. Go to a place he couldn't even see, but he gave him a word and said, you go. And it's like, I know you can't go, but when you get there, now you'll see why I sent you there. Write sent on your paper, vertically coming down the paper, sent. If you're going to be sent, here's what you have to be. You have to be, the S is submitted. You must be submitted. Submitted to who? Submitted to God. Submitted to his word, and submitted to his delegated authority. If you're going to be sent, the S is you must be submitted. Submitted to God. Submitted to his word. Submitted to delegated authority in your life. If you're going to be sent, the E here is enduring. Enduring. You've got to be able to endure the journey. Not a stop and start person. Start and stop person. You've got to be able to endure the journey. Now, in order to endure the journey, here's what you have to do. You have to pace yourself for the journey. And too many people start off at sprint pace, sprinting, going full force, but you can't maintain that pace. So pace yourself. Pace yourself. The race is not given to the swift, just for we walk by faith. It didn't say that we run, did it? We walk by faith. Now, and then notice the scripture that says this. Let us run with what? Patience. You know what it's called when you run with patience? Walking. Anytime that you run with patience, it means you're not in a hurry. It means you're walking. You have to pace yourself for the journey. You pace yourself for the journey. That's what I like about older people. They pace themselves for the journey. If they're going on a trip in 2 weeks, they start packing 2 weeks ahead of time. They are not going to get up the day that they're leaving town and start throwing stuff in the suitcase. No. They start washing stuff and make sure that they get ready way in advance. I just love the way they do that. They pace themselves. They don't want to be rushing in a hurry. They have learned the art of pacing themselves. So you have to be enduring. You must be submitted. You must be enduring. The end here is nourished. You must be nourished. If you're going to be sent, you've got to take something to nourish you. If you're going on an expedition, you've got to take something to nourish you. You must be nourished and nurtured. Nourished and nurtured. That means that you've got to, you are nourished by what feeds you. Physically, emotionally, the encouragement that you get from other people, but then you are nurtured by relationship. You are nurtured by proper relationship. Food nourishes us, but relationships nurture us. Food nourishes, but relationship nurtures. So when a man does something and he does it successfully, he gets the prize, and the prize provides some food for his soul and for his ego, but now he needs to be nurtured by somebody special in his life. So after he's done well, then the special lady in his life says, "That's my boo." And then he becomes nurtured by the relationship, not by the prize, not by money, not by position. We are only nurtured by relationship. We are nurtured by relationship. So you must be submitted, you must be enduring, you must be nourished and nurtured. And then the T is that you must be targeted. Targeted. If you are sent, you must be targeted, you must be teachable, you must be trusting. Targeted, teachable, trusting. When I say targeted, I mean focused. If you are sent, remember, if you're sent, remember that it's not only a person to please, it's not only a price to pay, there is a purpose to pursue. You need to be focused on your purpose. Focused on your purpose. Focused on the purpose, so that you can be teachable in the presence of God. And that helps us. And notice here he's talked about, I must work the works of him who has sent me while it is day. While it is day. That means while I have life, while I have light, while I have strength. While it is day, while I am in my kairos moment. Remember that the opportunity of a lifetime is only available during the lifetime of the opportunity. You have to know how to seize the moment. If you sit around and keep waiting on things, things will pass you by. But you are limited with your time, but you are unlimited with your possibilities. You're limited with your time, but you're unlimited with your possibilities. God is the only one who can work at night, because in him there is no darkness at all. And that's why the evening and the morning were the first day, because God was at work at nighttime. The evening and morning were the second day, and the evening and the morning were the third day in the days of creation in Genesis chapter 1. So God goes to work at night, because in him there is no darkness at all. And I want you to just see here in a very, very clear way that if you're going to be able to come into the healing of long-term issues, bad attitudes toward people, toward relationships, toward the opposite sex, toward the same sex, if you're going to deal with long-term issues where you've just never been able to keep a job, never been able to succeed at this, never been able to do this, never been able to do that. You've known people that have a problem, they've never been able to do it right, and it's not something that just started. They've got a track record for doing it. Don't raise your hands, but you know people who've just, as long as you have known them, they've always had a problem. He's always chased skirts, like the dog always chases cars. It's not anything that is brand new. They have always had this problem long term. He was always doing something that he had no business doing. Every time I turned around, it was always, you ever find people that's always broke? Always bombing money off of you? And it's a lifestyle, isn't it? Here's the thing, if you really want to heal long-term issues that are in your life, I want you to notice this. Number one, recognize the source of the problem. Recognize the source of the problem. Recognize the source of the problem. Sometimes the source of the problem is the devil. If it's the devil, rebuke him. Sometimes the source of the problem is you. It's our own lack of discipline. It's our own lack of preparation. If we are the source of the problem, we need to check ourselves and bring ourselves under subjection. But recognize the source of the problem. Was it my sin that caused this? Is it something in my heritage that I'm suffering? Am I struggling with alcoholism because my daddy was an alcoholic? Is it my heritage? Or is this something that's in my life and it is for the glory of God? Number two, you have to restore your vision. In other words, you have to have a new perspective. New perspective, a new perspective, a new perspective. That brings us to number three. How you change your perspective or your vision is that you have to notice what Jesus did in verse 6. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva. You must speak to the foundations. Where did man come from? The dirt. Jesus took saliva from his mouth and put it in the dirt. Remember, this man was blind from birth, and so Jesus took something out of his mouth. He spoke to foundational issues. Are you listening? I told you that I didn't even understand this until I had a brother that dropped dead of a blood clot at 38 years old a few years ago. And a woman came up and said that he was the father of a child, and he was dead by this time. I'm hearing this news, and actually he's in the ground. And so they said, bring the child in question, and they brought my mother in and the child in question to see whether this was indeed his child. And they didn't ask for their blood, they asked for their saliva, because the purest form of a man's DNA is not in his blood, it is in his saliva. And so they took cells from my mother's cheek and from the little girl's cheek and ran the test on them, and they said, this is no way this could be his daughter. See, they tested it. Now, here when Jesus now is trying to speak to the foundation, notice what he's doing. He's speaking to the foundation. He's correcting or healing a long-term issue. The man was born this way. So Jesus takes something out of his mouth. Guess what it is? DNA. He's taken DNA out of his mouth, spitting on the ground, not doing something nasty. He's doing something holy. He is speaking to foundations. He is speaking to foundations, and he takes divine DNA out of his mouth and he spits genes on the ground so he could regene this man. He needed a regeneration. And Jesus said, I've got to find a way now to change this man's perspective. I'll let something come out of my mouth, divine genes, holy genes. Maybe his mom and his daddy were jacked up, but I'll release divine genes into him by spitting it out of my mouth, releasing divine DNA on the ground to regene, speaking to the foundations on which his life was built. And he scooped that up and put that on his eyes, and then gave him a destination and said, go to Siloam and wash, and then thou shalt come again seeing. There is something that God does when God is trying to heal foundational issues. There is something in the mouth of Jesus that once you allow it to hit something that looks like it is dirty, my God, he has the ability to speak to dirty things and put it on your eyes. And as you wash by the power of the Spirit of the living God, he is able to bring a restoration back into your soul and restore your vision. I tell you, you ought to start looking for something that has come out of his mouth. I'm so glad that things that have come out of the mouth of Jesus Christ have so hit my eyes and opened revelation in my spirit so I can see. The only reason that we have to walk like we are blind and beg all of our lives is because we can't see who we are. But when the DNA that comes out of the mouth of Jesus hits us, and and we go and we wash. Remember that you've got to trace it, you've got to face it, you've got to erase it, wash it, erase it, and then you replace it. Jesus was replacing messed up genes with his DNA. He was regening the man, and it restored vision in him in an incredible way. You ought to be always looking for something that is in his mouth. That's why you ought to ask anytime that your life gets jacked up, you need to start looking around and seeing, is there a word from the Lord? And can a word from the Lord be put on something dirty and God still call healing to come into your life? Then you get a different destiny. You get a different destiny because God will put you on a mission. When you're blind, you're not on your way anywhere. When you can't see anything, where are you going? What are you doing? But when he all of a sudden opens your eyes, he'll put you on a mission and said, go to Siloam, that I'm sending you somewhere. When you get there and wash, you'll see why I sent you. When you get there, you'll see why I put you with him, why I put you with her. You'll see why I told you to go to the grocery store right now. You'll understand why you were standing next to this person, why you were sitting on the bus next to this person. You may not understand what God is doing right at that time, but God will deal with you in your spirit and something will explode by the power of the Holy Ghost when you obey him and simply go. You obey God and you go to a new place, and God will bring you into things that you have never seen before all of the days of your life. Just realize that there's something that comes out of the DNA of Jesus, and he is trying to regene it, and so he's just spitting on dirt and then putting it on men's eyes. I am so glad that God chose to spit on this dirt and to put some of his divine DNA. And all that I'm doing is placing it on your eyes. And here's what I'm saying to you: go and wash. Go and wash, and then you'll come again seeing, and God will show you what you need to do in order to solve certain things that are in your life. There are certain things that you couldn't see. You were blind. You didn't know how to get more money. You were blind. You didn't know how to restore the relationship. You were blind. You didn't know how to heal the condition that was in your body. But when you get something that comes out of the DNA of Jesus, when it comes out of his DNA, something will begin to hit your spirit, and you will come again seeing. When you go to the place where you are sent, there is an assignment that God has called you to do. You have not been given what you have been given to sit on a stool of do nothing, standing on the promises, sitting on the premises. And may I just tell you this and remind you of this, that as God will call you into certain things by his own Spirit, he'll give you a promise. God will show you the promise, but he doesn't always show you the process. And what confuses us is when there is a process that is ordained of God that is so uncomfortable. It is like the potter, master potter, putting you in a kiln and heating it so hard just to bake you and to get the gloss in your life. And when you don't understand the process, all that he'll show you is that I'm going to make you a vessel of honor. I will make you a vessel of honor. But he didn't show you what you were going to have to go through in order to become made that vessel. He never showed you the process. He only gave you the promise. He didn't show you the process. When he said that I'm going to make you a sweet person, he didn't show you that he was going to break you all the way down, that he would strip you of your pride and your dignity and your will. He would strip you. He would so tear things down. He would so make things fail in your life. God never shows you the process. God gave you the promise to say, listen, I'm going to make you a blessing. I'm going to deliver you. I'm your healer. I'm going to use you for my glory. But he never showed you the process that he was going to put you in to make that promise a reality. Because I don't think that we could deal with seeing the process. So God obscures the process. And he only shows Joseph the promise of them bowing down. And he never showed him the process of the pit. He never showed him the process of the prison. But he gave him a promise. And your real power is hanging on to the promise with tenacity. That I may not be able to see it. I'm blind, but he sent me. I don't know what's going to happen when I get there, but he sent me. I don't have all the money to do it, but he sent me. He told me to build this thing, but I don't have the resources, but he sent me. He called me into ministry, but I can't see how I can do it by myself, but he sent me. I've come right to the edge of life, and I don't know where I'm going from here, but he sent me. I don't know whether to go to the right or to the left, but all that I know is that he sent me. And there is a Siloam in your life. You better ask yourself, where has God sent me? Because your vision is waiting in that place. Your eyes will not pop open until you get to that place. There are certain things that you cannot understand going forward. You can only understand it when you look back and you understand now why I had to go through what I went through. He didn't show you the process. God gave you a promise. And I want you to know that everything that is sick in your life, every long-term issue can be healed when you submit that thing to the DNA that comes out of the mouth of Jesus. When Jesus spat on the ground and made spittle of the clay and put it on a blind man's eyes and then told him, go to the pool of Siloam and thou shalt come again seeing. You don't just see just because God put his hands on you. You don't just see because something came out of his mouth and hit your life. You see when you move in obedience to say, Lord, I don't know whether you're going to heal them or not, but you said, and these signs shall follow them that believe. They shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. If God says, listen, you just go, you open up your mouth and you just love them. You just encourage them. You just go and pray for them. You just pray, you just be a blessing. And God says, I will use you. You don't know what I will do. God just says, listen, you just give them this. Just give them, don't ask me any questions, just give it to them. And you don't ever know what God is doing nor why he is doing it. You never know. You have no understanding. But when you obey God, your eyes will come open. When you find your Siloam, the question is where are you sent? Without vision, you will go no place. You will perish where you are. But when he gives you vision, he always sends you on a journey.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.